If you've ever been curious to see how Evil Dead's Ash might fare against Jason Voorhees, or what a fight to the death between Chucky and Freddy Krueger might look like, then Terrordrome Rise of the Boogeyman is the game for you. Luckily, it's free, movie accurate, and criminally underrated. Not only that, but Terrordrome is the most important fan game you never played. Before we get into the horrifying details of Terrordrome, fan games, and the questionable morality of the gaming industry, make sure you like this video and subscribe to Nerdstalgic Gaming. The original Terrordrome demo dropped way back in 2005. The internet was still exciting, Doom was about to bomb in theaters, and people still thought this was the coolest cell phone on the planet. It was a simpler time, with simpler rules. This is probably why Terrordrome's creator, Mark Achave, felt safe uploading a fan game stuffed full to the brim with icons of the horror genre with absolutely no legal claim to their likeness. For the uninitiated, fan games are pretty much what they sound like. Games made by fans of a particular series or genre that use previously published games as a kind of springboard to create their own. A fan game might take pre-existing code, in-game assets, the game engine, or just a general vibe for inspiration from their chosen game, and then make something new. In the case of Terrordrome, Mark and programmer Bradley Acid Anderson took inspiration from 90s arcade-style fighting games like Mortal Kombat, and then pulled all of our favorite boogeymen into the arena. With each new update, players had the opportunity to see instantly recognizable legends like Leatherface, Candyman, and Pinhead fight against each other, and even fight against themselves. And this wasn't just a Mortal Kombat reskin, oh no. Each character moved, fought, and sounded just like they did in their respective films.
Name's Ash. Housewares.
Fight.
Their movesets were based on each character's famous kills, abilities, and weapons, and even the backgrounds were lifted from memorable scenes. And did I mention that all of this is free? It's not a perfect game, of course. The combat can be clunky and there are plenty of bugs, but considering it was made by two dudes in a basement, Terrordrome was absolutely stellar. And it was also clearly a labor of love created by passionate fans, which instantly drew the attention of other passionate fans. I think most of you probably know there's a pretty sizable cross-section of horror lovers and gamers, and they had been crying out for a horror-themed, uber-violent Mortal Kombat-style fighter since the first Mortal Kombat game came out in 1992. So it makes sense why Terrordrome was instantly on a lot of people's radar. It made the rounds online through horror and gaming forums and built up a cult following not unlike that of some of the movies the game chose to feature. People loved it, and it helped that the devs were consistently communicating one-on-one with fans through social media. And the hype only grew from there. Mark and his team continued to work on Terrordrome well into the 2010s and supplied a free download link to the game on their website. Nearing the end of Terrordrome's development, it got so popular that the site would regularly crash due to having so many people trying to download the game at once. But the growth brought some issues to Terrordrome's doorstep. As the fan base for the game grew, so did its notoriety. And inevitably, the companies who owned the rights to the horror franchise that Terrordrome was using started to take notice. Warner Brothers got in contact with the devs regarding their illegal use of Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees, and essentially told them to shut down the whole operation. This was, of course, back in 2011, when Warner and NetherRealm were gearing up to add Freddy, and eventually Jason, into the Mortal Kombat series. Big surprise there. So the tiny not-for-profit Terrordrome dev team did what anyone would do, took the free download link off their website. Terrordrome was now an individual project, and interested players could email the devs if they wanted to demo their totally not a game, and thus, Terrordrome continued, but not without scrutiny from the powers that be. Then, in December of 2015, the team, which had grown ever so slightly, released their last patch and officially ended development on Terrordrome Rise of the Boogeyman. Dodging legal trouble had officially become too much of a hassle, and the game was actually pretty polished. But this was not the end of Terrordrome in its entirety. When 2018 rolled around, the devs launched a Kickstarter for Terrordrome Reign of Legends, a sort of sequel and sort of spiritual successor. Reign of Legends follows the same fighting game format but features horror monsters from the public domain. It's currently in early access on Steam, and the reviews are looking pretty good. You could say that unlike the movies it's based on, Terrordrome has a surprisingly happy ending. But there's another more important reason we're highlighting it today. Terrordrome is a perfect example of the long and fraught history of fan games. Why? Because passionate devs, a ravenous fanbase, legal issues, and the eventual move into original development are not unique facets of Terrordrome's story. They're the hallmarks of a fan game dev experience. Since the dawn of the industry, fans have been drafting up fan works and companies have been drafting up cease and desist letters. Nintendo is infamous for shutting down anything that even remotely resembles a property they own, but they seem to have a particular vendetta against fan games. You might remember the hype surrounding the fan-made Pokemon Uranium, but even simple projects like full-screen Mario were met with legal threats by the company. But not all companies are so rigid. Sega had been publicly pro-fan game for years. Sonic Mania may be an official Sega release now, but it was originally a fan project by Christian Whitehead. And Bethesda has shown no signs of malicious intent toward massive projects like Beyond Skyrim, More Oblivion, or Skywind. Hell, most modern shooters out there owe their existence to the fact that id Software made Quake's source code public. But let's not pretend they're allowing these fan works to exist purely out of the goodness of their heart. In Bethesda's case, you might be tempted to think they're just letting fans do the work for them like they always do. But there are actually a lot of benefits to fan games and allowing them to have a place in the ecosystem. First, and maybe most obviously, fan games help to keep dead games and genres alive. These developers put in tens, if not hundreds, of hours of free work to create something cool. And then the copyright holders use the reception of those games to weigh the risks and rewards of reviving a series for real. The high-profile success of the unofficial Resident Evil 2 Reborn likely contributed to Capcom's official Resident Evil remakes, for example. Fan games can also become great original releases in their own right. We already talked about Sonic Mania, but what about Counter-Strike and Black Mesa? They're both based off of Half-Life. PUBG began as an Arma mod, and Team Fortress used Quake's coding. The creator of the beloved indie hit Undertale even got their start from Earthbound ROM hacks. They also ensure a level of accountability in the gaming industry. If an unpaid fan can make a better remaster, remake, or sequel than your professional development team, then it's time to step up your game. And because these fan games can end up being massive hits, they often push the industry in new directions. The original StarCraft was modded into Aeon of Strife, the first true multiplayer online battle arena, and that mod inspired the creation of Dota, which was originally a custom map made in Warcraft 3. And then, Dota inspired League of Legends, which is one of the most influential and popular video games to ever exist. So why do so many companies want to snuff out the creativity of passionate fans? As usual, the answer probably boils down to money. If fans make good games that rival or even top the quality of official releases, there's always a chance that players might skip the real game for a free fan one. Or at least that seems to be what developers think. This has never proven to be true, of course. If anything, we've seen that fan games only garner more excitement for a series and keep the fan base interested between official releases. And those that go on to become full unaffiliated releases just create a larger player base for the genre, which can only mean good things. A rising tide lifts all ships. But for whatever reason, fan game devs usually get left out in the storm. Maybe because a lot of them are self-taught and don't have those all-important degrees and previous game credits the wider industry tends to overvalue. But these massive companies also have their integrity to worry about. Having famous characters and trademarked universes in unlicensed fan projects is hard to explain to shareholders, so they shut them down. But this, in my opinion, is the wrong approach. We've proven that non-profit fan games have helped shape the gaming industry as we all know it. And as far as I can tell, fan games and the rest of the industry have a symbiotic relationship. And when you think of it, it's one that's weirdly wholesome for an industry that tends to be pretty ruthless to the people working in it. So let's lighten up on the fan works, particularly fan works that have absolutely no interest in making money off the backs of the franchises they're making content for. And game devs, maybe consider pulling a Sega and hiring your fans instead of threatening them with legal action. They probably know what your player base wants better than you do anyway. That was certainly the case with Terrordrome. The devs have said they believe Mortal Kombat games probably only included horror icons because of Terrordrome. And I agree with them. They, like so many fan games before and after, forged a disruptive path through the industry and changed its course. Which is why Terrordrome is the most important fan game you never played. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe and let us know down below, did you play Terrordrome? And what's your favorite fan game? See y'all in the next one.